first understand what React hooks are. So React hooks are simple JavaScript functions that are used to connect the React state and the lifecycle methods. So what React state is, it's an object that contains data or information of the component. And what lifecycle methods are, so I'm going to create a separate video on lifecycle methods, but for now you can understand it undergo three phases, which is the mounting, updating and unmounting. So previously when we use classes, we use component mount or component update sort of things to make things working. But when hooks came into picture, things changes drastically. So instead of doing all these or creating a separate class to make things working, we just use a simple hook which is of 2-3 lines and we are good to go. So now let's move to the execution part. Then over there we will understand the more functionalities of React hooks. Okay people, so on your right hand side is the list of all the React hooks that we will be learning in this video. But before I start, what you have to do is just create a default React application and remove the unwanted code from the app.js file. That's it. Okay, so after doing that, let's start with the useState first. Okay, so what useState is, it allows state variables in functional components. So the useState hook is a special function that takes the initial state as an argument and returns an array. So what does that actually means? So let's understand by implementing the code. Inside this source folder, let's create a file state.js. Okay, RFC. Let's make state capital as well because the name is capital. And over here, let's import our useState because this is very important, right? And inside this, let's use the useState const. Let's give it a state and set state. And useState, let's make it 0. Okay, so what this line says is the state is our state, initial state basically, and the set state is a function. With the help of this function, we will set the value for the state actually. Okay, and we have useState, and inside the useState we have our initial data. It can be an integer, string, boolean. It can also be a function as well. Okay, so there are very less cases where we will be using functions. Okay, generally we are not going to use that even in good projects. Okay, just to let you know, we can use functions is my purpose. And inside this, let's understand by implementing a small project sort of thing. Okay, inside the useState, let's by default make it a boolean, kept it true. Okay, give it a h1 tag. Inside this h1 tag, I am creating an event on click one. Okay, and when a user clicks on this h1 tag, I am tweaking the value. Basically, I am changing the boolean value. Okay, with the set state function. Nothing special, a simple thing. And based on that, I am changing the value, changing the color of data in the h1 tag. Okay, let's use it, style, color, state, and we are changing. Okay, let's give it useState example. Just save it. Okay, if you see over here, some of the code auto generated. It is the GitHub Copilot that I use, that's why. Go to the app.js, let's import it. Oh sorry, import state from state. Okay, and let's use it over here. Okay, just save it. You can see over here we have the data. Let's click. Okay, on click, this value changes. Okay, so let's say if the initial state, based on the initial state, let's change it to false. Okay, so the initial state is the crimson color. Okay, so that's it for useState. and it is quite simple, quite easy. But there are some complex situations in which useState is not the best one to use. For that we have another hook, so stay tuned for this hook in this video. Okay people, so let's move to our next hook, which is the useEffect. So what useEffect does, it used to perform side effects on your components, like fetching a data from an API or directly updating the DOM. So let's understand with an example first. Let's say you are in the Amazon website and you try to add a product to the cart. Okay, so at that time you were scrolling, you were logged in, but when you try to add the product to the cart, there is a check that is being there with the useEffect hook. If you are authenticated, then it will move the product to the cart. Otherwise it will get back to you to the login page. Okay, so without re-rendering the complete component, things happen. That's why some people thought that with the help of if else we can achieve that, but you cannot. The useEffect, the main reason people use useEffect, it doesn't affect basically the other things. Okay, so it doesn't re-render. I'll show that to you when we implement the code. So let's do that right away. Why to waste time? Inside this, let's create a new file and call it effect.js. Okay, inside this effect.js, first it's RFC. Okay, let's import two things, our useState and useEffect. Okay, let's create a timer. Okay, sorry, const time, set time and new date. Okay, simple useState, what I'm using as of now, useEffect. Okay, so useEffect takes two arguments. First one is the function and second one is the array in which we have all the dependency variables. So what dependency variables are, the for Amazon example is the authentication token. So whenever that value changes, the useEffect gets called by itself. So that's why in some of the projects you can see that useEffect is majorly used in the app.js file, the authentication sort of things. And so instead of doing this on every component, we can just do this in the app.js file and it will work. Okay, inside this useEffect, okay, at this point in time we do not have any dependency variable, so we just kept it as it is. Okay, let's create a timer. Sorry. Okay, let's use set timeout. Okay, what I am doing at this point in time is just using set timeout for 1000 millisecond, which is 1 second, and we are setting up the time. Okay, that's it. Right now over here I am returning, so this line, return clear timeout timer. If you remove this line and run the code, it will work, but the reason we are using this to prevent memory leaks. Okay, so let's go over here. Let's remove and use h1 tag because we use h1 in the useState as well. So let's use that. useEffect. Okay, if you have any questions, just ask me in the comment section. I will be happy to answer. Time dot to local time string. Okay, just save it. Okay, what I just did, I'm using a useEffect and just trying to fetch the output. That's it. Okay, let's use this in our app.js because that is important. Okay, like this. Okay, just save it and you can see this is getting incremented without doing the re-render. Okay, that's the important thing. Let's say if you don't trust me, okay, so I'm changing the value from 1000 milliseconds to 2000. So now this will, instead of incrementing by 1, it will do that with 2. Okay. 5 to 8 and 10, then 12. Okay, that's how things work. Okay, this is pretty simple. There is one, okay, so the calls with useEffect are asynchronous. Okay, there is one more hook that we will learn in the future. Over there, the difference between these two is with the synchronous or asynchronous thing. That's it. Okay, so that's it for useEffect. Now let's move to our next one, which is the useContext. Okay, so what useContext does, it helps to pass the data or the state through the component tree without having to pass the props actually. Yes, you heard it right. So when I was learning React initially, I was not aware of this useContext hook, that we can pass data without the help of props. And the benefit is it makes your code more readable and verbose. Okay, so now let's understand how the things actually works by implementing this. Inside this source folder, let's create a new file and let's call it context.js. Okay, so inside this we will be creating some more basically some more components sort of thing, so that we can understand how things are actually working, right? So let's first import React, then useState, use context, and another one, that is create context. Okay, now the first thing that we have to do, we have to create a context first. Okay, let's do that. Let's name it user context for now. Okay, create context, and inside this we will pass some data. Okay, let's call it name or age for now. Yeah, that's it. Okay, now let's create some more components or the functions basically, so that we can see from parent to child we need 2-3 different components, so that we can understand how things are actually working. Okay, so let's first create our parent component, parent function. Okay, cons say, okay, wait, let's call it context component for now. Okay, and this is the default one we will be returning as well. Okay, inside this first create a use state, and inside this use state we will be having a data. Okay, I'll tell you what I am actually doing, just wait for some more minutes. Okay, inside this name and the age. Okay, initially we are giving John and age 20. Let's call it Priyanshu. It's just my name. Let's make the age 22. Okay, and return also. Inside this, what we have to do is, so this user context is this thing dot provider, oh sorry, user context dot provider. Okay, so inside this we will be passing, we will be calling all other functions basically. Okay, and the value, the user state is basically this thing. Now we should see the output with Divyanshu in our last child that we will create. Okay, so inside this let's create our first child. Okay, let's give it a h1 tag. Let's make it level 1. Okay, okay, and let's create level 2, and inside this we will be calling the level 3. So level 3 is going to be the last child that we will call. Okay, so from the parent to the first child, then to the second child. That's how things will work. So let's call our level 2 child. Okay, inside this level 3, what we will be doing is the auto generator doing it for me, but okay, we will use context and get our data. Okay, so let's do this. User set user. Okay, so the auto generator did that for me. Okay, I just created a use context basically, where we have the function and the initial state, and the user state is where this data, the use state over here, the name and the age, and we are passing that value. Now we will see this value over here. Okay, and as level 3, and we will be using that value. Okay, now it should show us the Divyanshu and age 2022, right? So let's see if that works or not. Okay, go to the app.js, import and context component. Okay, okay, context component. Let's see if that works. Okay, I got an error. Use context is called in function level. It is neither React function. Let's see what's the error is. Go to context. Okay, so the error is because of the name that we give to our component. It should be in uppercase. Let's give it level and let's make it level 2. Okay, similarly for here, let's make it level 2 and let's make it level 3. And one more mistake that I did, they are not curly brackets. Okay, now that is okay. Okay, change that to. Now just save it. Okay, you can see level 1, level 2, level 3, and the data that we pass. So use context worked. Okay, now the next one is useRef. So what useRef does is allows you to directly create a reference to the DOM element. Okay, so basically it persists the value between the renders. So what does that means actually? Let's implement it and understand. Okay, let's cut this. Inside the source, let's create a new file. Let's call it reference ref.js for now. Okay, inside this, okay, let's rfc, yeah, and let's import useState and useRef. Okay, these two things, and let's do on state. Let's take this and make it 0 for now. Okay, nothing, just useState I'm using, and let's make it input of useRef. Let's make it 0. So now let's create a function. Okay, let's create a arrow function, increment for right now. Okay, set state plus 1 and input ref dot current plus plus. Okay, I'll tell you why I am doing that. Just let me write that first. Create a set timeout. Okay, inside this set timeout, what will we doing? Just move this. Okay, let's create an alert. On 1000 millisecond, which is 1 second, we are showing the state, this state, and the input ref value. Okay, let's use backticks, and inside this let's state and input ref. That's pretty much it. Okay, just copy this, so we will be calling it. Okay, h1, hit this useRef, give it a name, and let's create a button. Okay, what happened? Okay, now that will be again. Okay, the reason being we should use a div and then this thing, then yeah, let's first the state and the input ref. Okay, now a button on increment. The auto generator doing this for myself. Okay, let's just save it and let's understand what I just did. I created a useState. Okay, initial data 0. I created a useRef, initial data 0. Okay, I am incrementing both the values. Okay, and based on a 1 second delay, I am calling an alert. That's pretty much it. Okay, and on click this function gets called. Now how the actually the useRef works is the input ref dot current value. So this value is going to get executed first. Okay, no matter what the situation is, the most current thing is going to be the input ref dot current value. Okay, after this gets executed, the other processes gets the access to get executed actually. Okay, with what happened when I run this code, the state, it gets basically the +1 increment, there will be a delay in this, but with input ref that is not the case. So let's see. Okay, go to the app.js, let's import. Okay, okay, now you can see if I click over here once, it is getting updated over here, but why is it object? Okay, but the state is coming as 0. Okay, let's first fix this. Reference. Okay, input ref dot current. Yeah, now that will work. If I click over here, this gets called, but the state remains 1 and this changes to 2. Now let's say if I click on increment 4-5 times without stopping, so what do you think will happen? The ideal case is what I told you till now should be the alert box should open when the reference ref value basically gets increased to whatever level I am doing. Let's say for example, let's do it for 5 times. Okay, 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, I did it for 4, I missed one. So the from 2 to this value changes to 6, but the state, it remains 2 after the execution basically. So now if I click over here, 2 3 4, okay, after the execution the state value gets changed. Okay, this is how useRef actually works. Now let's move to the useReducer. So let's understand what useReducer is first. So useReducer is similar to useState, but a better alternative when you have a complex state building logic. So what does that mean? So as I told earlier, I think with the state, if let's say if we have multiple states, let's say 5 6 states, and they are connected to each other somehow. Okay, so in that scenario using a useReducer will make more sense instead of useState. Okay, that will make your code look better in terms of its appearance and easier to debug as well, and for a developer perspective as well, the code will look less cluttered. Okay, so for this I have already did something where it is useReducer. Okay, yeah, this useReducer. So there is a good amount of code, that's why I just copy pasted it over here. I'll share the GitHub repo so that you can get access to it, but I'll explain to you what I'm actually doing over here. Okay, so let's do that. I'm importing the useReducer first. Okay, let's over here I have created an arrow function. The reason to it being I don't want the value to get past 255 and to not to be lower than 0, less than 0 basically. Okay, we will come to this in some minutes. Let's first understand what I am doing over here. Okay, just almost similar the way we did with useState. We have our state, our function, useReducer. Okay, and over here this is the reducer function and this is the state. Okay, that's pretty much it. So this reducer is referring to this function. What it actually does we will understand in a bit. Okay, so that's simple in terms of the syntax. Now let's understand what it actually is doing. Okay, let me first use this in app.js. Okay, now it worked. Okay, let's go to code. So I created 6 buttons over here. So I am doing the dispatch thing, the set state thing basically, and over here I am giving a type increment r, decrement r, which is there in our switch cases. Okay, based on the action we are performing certain conditions. Okay, that will increase or decrease the r, g and b values. Okay, and based on that we are tweaking the colors. You all know that what RGB thing is. Okay, so we will not be going deep into this. And over here the useReducer example, based on these values, okay, the color gets changed. Simple. So the reason why I use useReducer, okay, so let's suppose if I have to do this, for R, G and B I have to create 3 different use states. Okay, and I have to use them one by one in our statements to make things working. But there, as I already said, there might be a chances that as a developer there are some chances, some cases that might not work out. Okay, so in that scenario we use useReducer. So let's say if I click over here on plus, you can see that the color is getting changed. Okay, so this is very simple. Okay, nothing out of the box. And over here we have an empty object.assign. Inside the object.assign we have an empty object, a state, and the data. Okay, one more thing to let you know, guys, make sure this has to be empty. The reason being, there might be some scenarios where useReducer will thought that this is not empty. They have already did the things that needs to be done based on the action type, so it might not work in some scenarios. So always try to make sure that this field is empty, the object should be empty. Okay, and after doing all this we are returning our state. That's it. Okay, so to be honest, there are very rare cases you will be using these useReducer thing, but yeah, you might face in some good level projects. Okay, so that's pretty much it for useReducer. Now let's move to the useLocation and useNavigate. Okay, so they are pretty simple ones, and actually I was not planning to add them to this list, but I was creating a project and then I realized that they will be really helpful for you guys. Okay, so for useLocation and useNavigate we need to install a package that is React Router DOM. So once we go with the series, when we were learning the React Router things, we will be using the useLocation and Navigate thing. But for now I am just putting a screenshot right now for you guys, showing how the code actually works. So it is not complicated. So the problem was with the private routes, when you are passing the props and trying to get the location, so you did not get any location object over there. So to solve this we have to use useLocation to make things working. And the another one, which is the navigate, is to navigate you to different pages in React application. Okay, so in private routes there is no history as well. When we pass the props we didn't get any history, so that's why we use navigate thing and useLocation thing. Okay, so I don't want to waste time on this because they are pretty simple. That's why we are doing this. Okay, now let's move to the other one, which is the useMemo. Okay, so what is useMemo? Basically a function that lets you cache the result of the calculations between re-renders. For better understanding, I have already did some code for that useMemo. Okay, so you can find this in my GitHub repo, and you can pause this video and copy it if you want. Okay, so I'll explain you what I actually did. I imported useState, useMemo over here. Okay, created a Fibonacci series. Basically the reason for it, I want to do excessive recursion, which I am doing at line number 8. Okay, in our component basically I am using useState, useMemo, and inside this the Fibonacci series. Okay, so now let's first use this in our app.js, then I'll explain you why we should use useMemo. So it is not recommended in some cases, but in some you can use that. Memo component. Oops, my bad. Okay, just save it. Now you can see useMemo example over here. Okay, so the reason we use memo is because of the performance thing. Okay, I'll explain you why. So let's say the initial state is 1 right now. I am changing it to 30. Okay, for now just save it. I am using useMemo. Okay, keep that in mind. If I do the plus, at some point with 36 it started to take good amount of time to execute. Okay, which is acceptable, which is expected as well. But in that scenario, let's say I click over here again. If I click on use memo, the use state thing, okay, yep, the set is green thing, the use state over here, it worked. It doesn't get affected, right? If I'm clicking, let's say I click over here and then again click, it worked. It is working. It is doing the job. But if I don't use the use memo thing, okay, let's just directly use Fibonacci, just save it. Okay, starting at 30, 35, and I click over here. No, some more. Okay, I clicked on use memo, it didn't work. It takes a good amount of time to execute. So that these kind of performance reasons are the major thing that we use memo actually. Okay, so personally in my projects I never use that, but this can be helpful in some scenarios actually. Okay, so that's it for use memo. Actually the thing is, the use context, use effect, and use state, they are like the 99% of the uh, hooks that you will be using actually in the real case scenarios, and the use reducer in some cases. Okay, so that's it. Now let's move to the use callback. For use callback, actually it is same as use memo, but it return a memorized callback function. In use memo we get the result, but in callback we get the function. So that's the major difference between these two. Okay, now let's move to the use layout effect. So basically it's similar to use effect, but works synchronously after all downloading is done. So with use effect it's asynchronous, and with layout effect it is synchronous. This is the major difference between these two. Okay, now the remaining two hooks are use imperative and use debug value. So they are quite advanced hooks that you might not use them. Reason being, they are too advanced that when you are creating a library, then in some scenarios you might need that. Otherwise there is no need of using that. Okay, so I think that covers all the topics that we need to learn, all the hooks that we need to learn in this video. That's it for this video. Hope you like this content. If you like this content, share it with your friends, subscribe to my channel. And one more quick update, if you want me to upload a separate video for the lifecycle methods, do let me know. I will be happy to do that. And the React router video is going to be the next one, and I am planning this after the GraphQL video is on live on my channel. Okay, so stay tuned for that. Bye bye.